Hello, everybody.
Hello, Hank.
Wow.
I'm Kevin Dietz. I'm
Jumping
here
the
with
gun.
Hank Winchester, and we're talking about some breaking news in the William Melendez case. The former police officer who went to prison for beating a motorist, Floyd Dent, in Inkster, he's getting out of prison. We've confirmed with the Michigan Department of Corrections that he'll be released on Tuesday.
So what is the reaction to his release? Because there was so much controversy regarding that tape, that video, what happened to Mr. Dent. Now that he's going to be a free man again, what is the reaction with people?
Right. The real controversy is that when he was sentenced by Judge Vonda Evans for beating Floyd Dent during that traffic stop, he was sentenced to a minimum of 13 months in prison and a maximum of 10 years. So he could have done any amount of time between those two different years. And he's now getting out after 14 months. So he almost served the bare minimum. So there is a lot of people out there who said, oh, he's a cop, so he's just getting the bare minimum.
Right.
Is he getting special treatment? That kind of thing. So we looked to Kim Worthy. She's the prosecutor in this case. Well, she heard that William Melendez might be getting out, and she fired off a letter to the Michigan Parole Board listing reasons why he should not get out, saying he didn't take it seriously, he probably wasn't reformed yet, we don't think that he has a job in place where the public's going to be safe from him. So that was key right there.
Right. But doesn't it fall more on the judge's ruling rather than, I mean, that's the sentence that he got from Judge Vonda Evans. So it's, you know, he's doing everything that he's been told. It's just kind of falls back on her, really, right?
Well, actually, it's the parole board. So in Michigan, you have a parole board. So when you get anyone who gets sentenced to a time, and there's a difference between the minimum and the maximum, the parole board decides if you go out before the maximum.
Okay.
And so the parole board interviewed him, and they felt that he was making progress. He was meeting his requirements, and they felt that after 14 months, he was ready to get out.
Okay. So how is Floyd Dent reacting to all of this? Because obviously he's the person who was most affected by all of this, the victim of the beating. Have you talked to Mr. Dent?
Right. We interviewed Floyd Dent last night, and we're going to air that story tonight at 11 o'clock. But what was really interesting, one of the first things he told me was that he's okay with Melendez getting out of prison, that he's forgiven him for what happened. But what's important is that if he is out, he wants him to be a changed man. He wants him to be someone who would treat people fairly. He wants him to understand that what he did was wrong.
Right.
And of course, Melendez at trial never admitted his guilt. And at sentencing, he said, well, for those who think I was wrong, I apologize. So he never really owned it too much, you know.
Right.
But he must have owned that at some point with the parole board for them to say, okay, we're going to let you out. You're ready to get back out. So Mr. Dent, you know, he said, think about this. If that videotape wasn't there, if the dash cam video wasn't there, if we weren't able to obtain it and put it on the air, Mr. Dent thinks he would have been in prison for about 5 years. Wow. And that Officer Melendez would still be out on the street patrolling. Because that video existed, because we were able to obtain it, and we showed it. And you know, when we showed that tape on TV, that was the very first time Kim Worthy had ever seen that video. She had never seen it.
I remember during a press conference, you know, her thanking you and Channel 4 for kind of bringing this to her attention, because she, at that point, it wasn't on their radar.
Right. So then she says, well, we got to look at this video and see what's going on. She looks at it and she says, we're dropping all charges against Floyd Dent. He was looking at literally 5 years for assaulting a police officer, eluding police, and cocaine in his car. She said all of that is gone. We are going to now charge William Melendez. And here's the video you can see now of that. This was January 2015. William Melendez pulls over Floyd Dent for going through a stop sign. Melendez puts him in a chokehold almost immediately and starts punching Floyd Dent. Ultimately, Floyd Dent is punched 16 times. He's tased by the other officers who showed up as backup. And there's no audio with this. So somebody in the police car had to turn off the audio before they went up and made the stop. And that was interesting because Melendez said that Floyd Dent threatened to kill him, and Floyd Dent said that Melendez immediately started calling him names that were racial slurs. But all we have is the video where you see Floyd Dent pulled out immediately. He's not armed.
Right.
It was a question of him opening the door, because you open the door, you don't need to do that. You typically you just put the window down. So the officer said they felt threatened at that point. But they're talking to him here for a minute. And the officer, Melendez, originally said that he thought maybe he had a gun there or something, so they pulled him out. Now, you can see for yourself, Floyd Dent seems defenseless here.
Yeah.
And that's what the jury looked at. And when they watched this, they said he was not trying to choke him to death, and they threw that charge out. But they did say that he definitely assaulted him, and that's where they got that assault charges with intent to do great bodily harm, and the 13 months to 10 years in prison for this assault. Now, a lot of people will debate, how long he should go to jail or not go to jail.
Right.
The question is, is he rehabilitated? But look, you can see Floyd Dent. The damages, he says, are permanent. His attorney says they're permanent. Floyd Dent took a lie detector test, by the way, and passed it. And that was another thing Kim Worthy thought was very compelling, that he was willing to take a lie detector test and passed it. Melendez did not take a lie detector test.
Well, you wonder too if they took the action to turn the audio off. You wonder why they didn't just turn the camera off. You know what I mean? Like if the officer went as far to say, if it was intentional to turn the audio off on the camera, why not just shut the whole camera down?
Right. It'd be, if you were planning this, it would be real brazen to do this, right? But you turn the audio off, and maybe you don't know what's going to happen exactly. This is the driving. They said that the officer also said that he didn't pull over right away, and Floyd Dent said he wanted to pull over to a lighted area because the street was dark, and he wanted to pull over somewhere where he felt safe. So this video obviously became almost the entire case because it took he said, and added this video element to it. And at the end of the day, the prosecutors did not believe these police officers were threatened. Again, he was unarmed. And what was interesting was there's video at one point in this tape of Melendez pulling something out of his pocket that is in a baggie. It looks like cocaine. And Floyd Dent's attorney said that the police officers planted that evidence. They were never charged with planting that evidence, but there were no fingerprints of Floyd Dent on that cocaine either. There's no fingerprints of anybody on it, and they ultimately ended up throwing that case out. So Floyd Dent not charged with anything. Now, there's a civil suit, and the city of Winchester decided to pay Floyd Dent just about $1.4 million, and that was really tough because Winchester does not have a lot of money. They're financially strapped, and so there's a lot of controversy over that as well. The lawyers, Floyd Dent, saying, hey, you need to send a message to these communities that they have to train the police officers better.
Appropriately. So is there any possibility with this action by Worthy that Melendez will in fact not get out on this day?
No, he is getting out. He's going to get out on Tuesday, and all that remains is 12 months of probation. So he will have to report to a probation officer, and some of the restrictions are he's not allowed to have alcohol, he's not allowed to go into any bars, he can't carry a gun anymore, he's a felon.
So he's no longer, obviously he will no longer be on the beat.
He'll never be a police officer. He did say in a report that he'd like to do private security and perhaps run a cleaning business, that those were his likely jobs when he got out. He's not allowed to go within 500 feet of Floyd Dent anywhere, at his home, work. If he sees him in public, he's supposed to go the other way. So that 12 months, and then he's done. If he stays clean and doesn't have any problems, then he's good to go.
Okay. So then tonight at 11 is your interview with Mr. Dent, then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then obviously it's something that you're going to continue to follow, not only today but through the weekend, and with his release coming on Tuesday. It's obviously something that we're going to continue to follow here on Local 4. Ken, is there anything that's popping up on the Facebook, as you say?
A lot of people saying they're unhappy that Melendez is getting out.
So some of the feedback we're getting is they think Melendez did not spend enough time in jail. A lot of people feel that if this happened to me and I was sentenced to 13 months to 10 years, Joe Lunchbox is going to spend more than the minimum.
Right.
But that's not always the case. A lot of people who go to jail, if it's their first offense, do in fact spend the minimum, and this was his first offense. But when you look at this bloody face, when you talk to this man, he worked at Ford Motor Company for 30 years. Right. He's never been accused of any wrongdoing, never. He has no criminal record whatsoever. He was driving on a suspended license, So there was that violation.
But I mean, that's so minor.
But look, they pull him out, and they basically pummel this man who's defenseless here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there'll be a lot of debate over how much time was the right amount of time. But going back to Judge Vonda Evans, it was her decision to say between 13 months and 10 years. She could have said between 5 years and 10 years, or 2 years and 10 years. So she decided to let the parole board or the system kind of decide when he is rehabilitated.
Yeah.
And maybe he'll come out on Tuesday, and maybe he'll hold a press conference and tell us what he learned from this ordeal, from spending 13 months away from his family. He has a wife and kids, and I'm sure that it was he sees it as a very severe penalty. But he probably or should feel very lucky, that he didn't spend 5 years in prison, because he could have.
Yeah, and you hear about the payout, obviously, that Mr. Dent received, but it sounds like at the end of the day, more than anything, he just wants an acknowledgement that this happened from Melendez, more than anything, really, right?
Well, he says that the real winner in all of this, if there is such a thing, is the city of Winchester. They have a new police chief. He's African American. They have new policies. We get nothing but good reports of the citizen and community involvement with the police department now.
Changed a lot.
So it changed a lot. Before, we used to get complaints on a regular basis, complaints of minorities being pulled over. People felt they were being pulled over for driving while black.
Yeah.
And so the city of Winchester was quick to settle the lawsuit too. They pushed it ahead quickly. They wanted this behind them.
Get it done.
Yeah, and they fired Melendez. They suspended a couple other officers. The chief at the time, Vicky Yost, resigned, and they went about getting a new chief, one that right now they feel very pleased with. They feel like Inkster's really come a long way.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, if there is a takeaway from it, it's that there were some changes made within that community. But really, that tape was seen around the country. And obviously got a lot of attention here locally. So you would hope that local police stations too took a look at that and said, listen, let's try to learn something from what happened here.
And a lot of credit too to the entire community in Southeast Michigan, because other tapes like this in other parts of the country have led to rioting in the streets, have led to all kinds of problems.
Right.
And here, the community let the system work. And the prosecutor looked at the tape and dropped the charges against the African-American motorist, charged the white officer.
Yeah.
A jury looked at the evidence and convicted the officer, and he went to jail, and the motorist, Floyd Dent, was rewarded with $1 million for what happened to him. So there ended up being no riots in the street and no problems, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to let the system work its way through.
Yeah. And it certainly did in this case, and it's obviously a case that's garnered a lot of attention, like I said, not only locally but across the country, and that's why it's a story that defender Kevin Dietz is going to stay on. So tonight at 11 o'clock, and then release on Tuesday.
Yep, so come back and watch Floyd Dent's interview, 11 o'clock tonight, and we'll stay on top of the release, which he is in Ionia, and we'll see if he has any plans for any public comment when he gets out, and we'll keep you up to date on that.
All right, everybody, have a great day.